So Ridley Scott's Napoleon is a historical epic about the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, played by Joaquin Phoenix. And Scott's film, it's weird. Like it has its hills and valleys, and it takes its liberties here and there. And thematically, I think it's on point. I like what Scott is trying to do with this film by trying to frame Napoleon as this guy who just had had an ego, but also kind of just recognized, his opportunity to seize power, and just kind of like just passively went through the motions, acting as though everything that was going to happen to him was granted to him by destiny. And from that framing, it's interesting what Scott is able to explore with framing Napoleon this way. He's able to find interesting moments where he highlights his love life with Josephine, played by Vanessa Kirby, and their relationship is just kind of it's one of those ones that like it has like a little bit of passion, but you don't get to see as much of it, and like it's weird. Like there's chemistry between Phoenix and Kirby in a few scenes, and then other scenes are just kind of flat, where it's like where the romantic tension between them isn't quite there. And sometimes it is intentional, like it's meant to like showcase like the decay of their marriage and how like Napoleon only wants this woman just so that he can have an heir. But other times, other times like it feels like it's trying and it's not working in a few scenes. I will say this: I like how like Phoenix plays this role straight, and that there are moments where honestly, the film gets like funny at times, for as strange as it sounds. Like I'm not going to try to spoil the lines here, but there is one talk. There is one fight actually that Napoleon has at the dinner table with Josephine, in which he's arguing about destiny. He like talks about like he talks about his food being his destiny, and there's like a little bit of like a food fight. And then there's other scenes like of him just being like inadequate in bed, and just a few scenes that are actually pretty funny within this, which I think kind of work for this film because it's trying to cover like a broad range here. Like it's trying to cover everything from the execution of Marie Antoinette, when Napoleon kind of saw his time to kind of like rise through the ranks, all the way up to Napoleon's kind of like almost unceremonious death. So basically, yeah, like it's the life and death of Napoleon within this film. Now, of course, like the big thing that I'm sure like a lot of people are going to be looking forward to here is how are the war scenes? Because like the film isn't just contained to like showcasing Waterloo. Although Waterloo, it's meant to be like the big epic finale battle, and it is pretty cool. It's beautifully staged. I love how of course Scott gets the camera out there and has like tons of people on there. There's lots of violence. There's lots of action, carnage, and brutality. Very vicious brutality, which I kind of gotta admit, caught me off guard at a few times. Like, there's horses on the battlefield and they get blown to bits. There's tons of blood here and there, especially when they cover other parts of the campaign, like at one point where he's cutting off like troops, as he's making his way into Russia, in which people are falling through the ice to their death. Just very brutal, bloody battle scenes. They're all exciting and cool to watch. I think I should preference this review by saying that if that's the only thing you're coming to this film for, you may be dismayed by how many of the scenes that are not on the battlefield, which are kind of just linger on trying to find something more within Napoleon's ego. And some of them, a lot of those scenes don't work as well as they should. There are a lot of scenes that are just honestly kind of boring here and there. And it's mostly just because like it's trying to portray this kind of like nihilism that comes through Napoleon, which I don't feel comes across as well as it should, because there are several scenes where like Napoleon is just almost kind of like bored himself, where he's just kind of like falling asleep in all this, which I understand the intent of these scenes. I kind of do admire Scott for trying to frame Napoleon in this way, but there are a lot of scenes that really just don't work here. And here's the thing that might make me reconsider like how I'm viewing this film right now with like its hills and valleys. Like, you know, like the battles are cool, and a few scenes between, you know, Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby are kind of cool, but then there are these patches where it's trying to cover the politics. It's trying to cover, like Napoleon trying to get an heir, his romances and his political strategies that just kind of fall flat. I'm willing to bet that if I watch the director's cut of this film, which Ridley Scott has said there is, like, I mean, this film runs 2.5 hours, and he said that his director's cut is going to be roughly somewhere around the ballpark of 4 hours, so there's at least another hour and a half that was cut out of this film. I'm curious to see if that kind of has more scenes that kind of like fill in more of like that kind of have more of a chemistry between Phoenix and Kirby, but also showcase more sides of Napoleon, because you can definitely tell, especially in the first act of this film, that it is a little bit rushed. Like within like the first act, it's trying to cover all these key events that led up to like Napoleon's rise, and they just kind of like glaze over them quick. Like, they're just like, okay, here's when the execution was, here's the revolution, here was when they were forcing, these politicians out, here's when they had the insurrection, and it's just like, these are like blink and you'll miss it moments. Like, if you go to the bathroom early when you see this film and you come back, it's like, wait, how much history did I miss it? Because it's just like, in the first act, just like bam, 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 bam. It's like, here's the state, and it just skates by them really quick. And I got the feeling that in Scott's director's cut, which, it's really Scott, with these big epics, there's always going to be director's cut from him. I get the feeling like those scenes are going to be fleshed out a little bit more. And I almost think that I'm going to view it the same way that I viewed Kingdom of Heaven, because like Kingdom of Heaven, the theatrical cut I liked, but I felt like there were like key parts missing from it to make me like it a little bit more. And then later I did watch the extended director's cut, and it was a lot better, and I actually liked the film a lot more. So as it stands out, I like Napoleon in bits and pieces, despite how flat it appears at times. But honestly, like I'm very much looking forward to like the director's cut to see if I like it a little bit more. But I will say, for the few moments that it made me laugh with Joaquin Phoenix's performance, for the scenes of brutality that just kind of like smack you in the face at times, including one scene where Napoleon just smacks Josephine right in front of all his subordinates, which did catch me off guard a little bit with how he delivers it. I kind of dug the film. Like, it's definitely not Scott at his best, especially, when you compare this cut to, like, Kingdom of Heaven. But again, when the director's cut eventually comes out, which I think it's going to come out on Apple TV, I am curious to see if I dig it more. But as it stands, it's just like, it's an okay historical epic. It has its unique moments here and there. It's beautifully shot for a lot of its war scenes. Joaquin Phoenix's performance works here and there. When he's actually kind of like emoting and taking charge of scenes is pretty cool, but other scenes where he's just kind of like going through the motions and just, doing like the expected, like, political meetings and maneuvers, or even just like, just sitting in a room, it's not as intimidating as some of the other scenes. So very uneven here. I will say though that I think Vanessa Kirby's performance is a bit more consistent than Phoenix. I feel like she has a little bit more power and desperation, and also more smarts. Like, at one point, she is just like flat out asking Napoleon, like, look, I can read the writing on the wall. We're probably going to get divorced. When's it going to happen? It's just like, she's a little bit more, like, they stage her as a little bit more intelligent than Napoleon within this film, which I think is kind of an interesting angle. I also got to admire, like, Scott going for some, a little bit of historical revisionism here and there. Like, at one point when he has his campaign in Egypt, Napoleon is, like, firing cannons at the pyramids, which is disputed, but it's like, it looks cool. Which, honestly, Scott's been trying to give, like, these long-winded responses to explain why the film is the way it is, but honestly, he just needs to go full John Carpenter at this point. Just go like, I don't care. It looks cool. which to his credit, yes, there are a lot of scenes, just the way that they're staged, they look cool. Historically accurate? Probably not, but a lot of historical epics usually take their liberties here and there, and if you're going to take your liberties, might as well take them to make the film look cool, and he does. So the film looks beautiful, has some decent performances here and there, but a lot of patches that really don't work here. So if you're going in just expecting like a fast-paced, action-packed historical epic, which the film is kind of advertised as, you're not really going to get that. So fair warning if you're going to this film. But if you're willing to stick with it through a few boring patches here and there, it actually is a beautiful looking film. And it kind of worked for me. Like, it's going to be a highly divisive film because, like I said, big patches that don't work, but also long stretches, cool war scenes that just honestly made the film for me. So I'm very curious to see what the director's cut is, and I might do a second review just to see if anything changes. But as it stands now, it's an okay historical epic. I mean, it's fun to see Joaquin Phoenix throw food. So, and some cool war scenes. So yeah.